Here's another one about language, right? Not a joke. This is an actual genuine question about language from a listener called Franck, who sent me a message asking about the expression in on. Okay? And Frank said to me this, Luke, would you do me a favour? Can you sometime explain the usage of the expression in on? I don't know in what cases it's appropriate and why it's used in that way. The last time I came across it was when I watched the first episode of Grey's Anatomy. Grey's Anatomy, that TV show about doctors. The young doctors who came fresh from the university to the hospital in Seattle to work there were welcomed by the director with the words, "Each of you comes here today hopeful, wanting in on the game." And this expression is a little bit confusing to me. Usually we use in or on in a sentence. Yeah, we do. Unfortunately, I can't remember the other example I've seen. I hope this makes more sense to you. Thank you for your effort. Okay, Frank, I think I know what you're saying. Basically, Frank wants to understand how we use in on and what in on means. And that quote from Grey's Anatomy was, "Each of you comes here today hopeful, wanting in on the game." I can actually play you part of that speech from Grey's Anatomy now.
Each of you comes here today hopeful, wanting in on the game.
Wanting in on the game. So this guy's American, so he pronounces it differently. I would say wanting in on the game, and he says wanting in on the game.
Each of you comes here today hopeful, wanting in on the game.
Wanting in on the game. So if you are wanting in on something, it just means that you want to be included in something, you want to be involved in something, you want to be part of something, you want to be in on the game. You want to be part of the game. Okay. To be in on something. Now, to be honest, Frank, in on, just the expression in on, doesn't really mean anything. It's all about how those words in on combine with other parts of the sentence. At the beginning of this episode, I actually said to you, I just want to check in on you and see how you're doing. I want to just check in on you and see how you're doing. So don't focus on in on. You need to focus on the whole expression check in on, like check in on you or check in on someone. Or in the case of the Grey's Anatomy video, to want in on something. Okay? So this is not about the meaning of the prepositions in and on, but it's about the meaning and grammar of verbs like check in on. Okay, now check in on, this is the example I'm using. I'm just checking in on you. Some people say that this is a phrasal verb or a multi-word verb or an intransitive prepositional phrasal verb. To be honest, we could spend ages trying to categorize this kind of grammar or vocabulary to get exactly the correct term for these slightly different types of verbs. And there are many different names in different books for these types of verbs. And I guarantee that if we did spend loads of time defining what a phrasal verb is and what they should all be called, it will just give you a headache, all right? Phrasal verbs are notoriously difficult to understand from a grammatical point of view, and as a result, people don't really agree on what to call them. You know, type 1 phrasal verbs, type 2 phrasal verbs, separable phrasal verbs, non-separable phrasal verbs, transitive or intransitive prepositional verbs, intransitive, non-separable, idiomatic, particularized verb phrases. Let's just call them bastards, okay? Let's just call them bastards, because they are bastards, aren't they, phrasal verbs? Absolute bastards. Certainly when you encounter them for the first time, properly. I mean, you know, they're difficult and they're tricky. So they can seem like right bastards if you're learning the language or if you're trying to teach it. Because when you encounter phrasal verbs, you know, they can seem horrible, almost like evil, cruel parts of the language. Of course, once you get beyond that feeling and you learn a few phrasal verbs and get comfortable using them, they become less like bastards and more like just slight bastards, you know, just a little bit, slightly bastardish. Bastardish isn't really a word, okay? Anyway, then, you know, once you learn more about them, they're not really bastards at all. And eventually you can call them your friends. And in fact, if you think about it, you're already friends with some phrasal verbs, like, for example, take off, give up, shut up, carry on, find out. You probably know all of those, and you've discovered that they're not really that bad. You know, they're the friendly phrasal verbs. In fact, they're pretty cool phrasal verbs when you get to know them. And, you know, you develop a sort of deep respect for them after a while, to the point at which you can call them bastards again. You know, like the way with people, you call people bastards if you don't like them. Oh, he's an absolute bastard. You bloody bastard, you know. But then when you love someone and they're your really good friend, you can also call them a bastard, like, but in a good way. Like, how are you, you old bastard? Come here, you bastard. Give me a hug. How have you been, you old bastard? By the way, you shouldn't call people a bastard unless they really deserve it. Okay, it's a rude word. Anyway, in on. Let's have a look at in on. So the phrase that you quoted from Grey's Anatomy, Frank, was, each of you comes here today hopeful, wanting in on the game. All right then. Now, the phrase to want in on something means to want to be part of something or want to be a piece of something, to want to be involved in something. Okay, and in on, there are a few other phrasal verbs that include the words in on. Check in on, want in on something. For example, I'm putting together a team of people for a bank job. This is not true. It's just an example with some phrasal verbs in it, okay? I'm putting together a team of people for a bank job. We've found out that $100 million in diamonds is being delivered to the bank next month, and we're going to take it, okay? We've got an inside man at the bank. Everything's been cleared. Security's been paid off. We need a driver and some muscle to carry the bags and take the money to the safe house. Who wants in? Who wants in on this job? Okay, there you go. Who wants in on this job? So to want in on something means to want to be part of something or want to be involved in something. Now, other phrasal verbs also have in on as part of the phrase. Like, for example, copy me in on any correspondence. To copy someone in on an email means to include someone in the email chain, to be CC'd. Okay, I want in on this job. That means you want to be included on the job. Are you in on the joke? To be in on a joke means to be included in the joke, to understand the joke. Like, let's say, for example, you're playing a practical joke on someone in the office. Let's say you've glued all of the person's pens and equipment to their table. Right, it's a really annoying practical joke that you're playing on someone in the office. You've glued all of the stuff to the table, so it's all stuck. The pens are stuck. The computer is stuck to the table, and some of the other people in the office are in on the joke. That means that they know it's happening and they've been clued up. They've been informed it's happening. The guy whose desk it is not in on the joke. He's got no idea it's happening, and he comes and sits down and he's like, trying to move everything, and then he realizes that he's stuck to his own chair as well, and then you will laugh at him. But some of the people in the office are like, because they're all in on the joke. They're all included in the people who know what the joke is happening. Here's another one. I'm just checking in on you. As I said before, to check in on someone means to it basically means to check someone, but it also suggests visiting someone in order to check how they're doing. And it could also be used for phone calls, like bring, hello. Hi, yeah, it's Luke. I'm just checking in on you. How's everything going? All right. So it could be used on the phone, but you can imagine someone coming into an office. You're working on a project, and someone comes in, opens the door. Hi, I'm just thought I'd check in on you, just to see how everything's going. I'm just checking in on you. How are you doing? I thought I'd just check in on you to see if you need anything. Okay, so these mainly, if we start to categorize them, they're probably intransitive phrasal verbs with a dependent preposition. What are you going on about, Luke? Well, okay. Now, verbs in English aren't always one word. Sometimes they are 2 or even 3 words. Okay, we have a lot of verb phrases, basically, also called phrasal verbs. They're like normal verbs, but instead of being just one word, they can be several words. And just like normal verbs, some phrasal verbs are intransitive. Intransitive means that the verb doesn't need an object. Okay? So, in a sentence, you've got subject, verb, object. Okay? Subject, verb, I like pizza. I is the subject, like is the verb, and pizza is the object. And like is a transitive verb. That means it takes a subject. You can't just say I like, because if you just say I like, then people are going to think you're weird, because like needs an object. You can't just go, oh, I like. Unless you sound, unless you want to sound like Borat, Borat, I like, then, you shouldn't say I like. I like something. I like it. I like you. I like pizza. I like jokes, whatever. So like is a transitive verb, but some verbs are intransitive, which means that they don't need an object. For example, the verb comment. Would you like to comment? Would you like to comment? Participate. I'll participate. I'll participate in the bank robbery. You see, in order to add an object to that intransitive verb participate, you need a preposition in. That's a dependent preposition. It adds an object to an intransitive verb. Other intransitive verbs, object. I object. He strongly objected. Like, what did Jeff think about the proposal? Well, he strongly objected, actually. Okay. And complain as well is another example. What did she think? Well, she didn't like it. She complained. All right. So they're all intransitive verbs. And if you want to add an object to them, then you have to use a preposition, a dependent preposition. For example, comment. Would you like to comment? Would you like to comment on the game? So comment on. Participate. I'll participate. I'd like to participate in the workshop. Participate in. Participate in the bank robbery. Object. She strongly objected. She strongly objected to the decision. Okay. And complain. She didn't like it. She complained. She complained about the changes. So comment on, participate in, object to, complain about. Okay. And so, these are intransitive verbs that take a dependent preposition when you add an object. And this works with some phrasal verbs as well. Like, for example, copy in. Copy me in. Copy me in on the email. Catch on, meaning sort of realize or work out what's going on. I didn't catch on to what he was talking about. I didn't really follow or understand what he was talking about. Drop in, meaning visit. I think I'll drop in tomorrow at some point. Meaning I think I'll visit tomorrow at some point. But if you want to add an object, I think I'll drop in on you tomorrow. Drop in on someone. And talk back, another one. If you imagine a teacher is talking to a child, and the teacher says, do your homework. And the student says something, the kid says something like, don't tell me what to do. And the teacher says, don't talk back. Don't talk back to your teachers. Okay. Talk back to. All right then. Did you catch on to the secret plan? Shall we drop in on Jeff in his new flat? What do I have to do to keep ahead of the competition? The teachers hate it when Dave talks back to them. Okay. So basically, check in on someone, to want in on something. These are phrasal verbs, and I suggest you try to learn them as complete phrases. Try to learn this kind of language as a chunk of vocabulary, and choose not to be distracted by the individual words, but instead see it as a whole. Okay, and when you start to think about this, you will start to notice these patterns of verb plus little other words. Copy me in on, talk back to him. Participate in, or take part in, for example. So try to see English as lots of these little chunks of vocabulary. For example, in this paragraph, okay, I'm just going to read out a paragraph for you, and see if you can notice the sort of phrasal verbs here, and try to notice them as chunks, not as individual little words. All right. So knock, 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 knock. A boss is entering someone's office. Okay, he's entering the office. Cuckoo. Hello, just checking in on you. Just thought I'd drop in on you just to see how you're getting on with the project. Really glad to see that you're working hard on this one. It's exactly the sort of thing we need to do in order to keep ahead of the competition. Good work. Just make sure you keep copying me in on all the email correspondence with the clients and suppliers so that I can keep up to date with all the work that you're doing while I sit in my office smoking a cigar and watching the cricket, okay? Just make sure you keep copying me in on all the emails so I can keep up to date with everything, okay? That's a sort of an annoying boss who is asking you to do all the work while he sits in his office doing nothing. So we had checking in on you. I thought I'd drop in on you to see how you're getting on with the project. Keep copying me in on all the emails so that I can keep up to date with all the work that you're doing. Okay, then. You will see that paragraph written on the page for this episode, by the way. So there you go, Frank. That's an answer to your question about in on, that it's actually part of a phrasal verb, and you should try to identify that as a phrasal verb, not just in on. In on doesn't mean anything. It's want in on or copy me in on something.